This is Higher Maths, it's practice paper F, and we're working on question 22 in the non-calculator paper. So we have to write x squared minus 6x plus 13 in this form here, and that's completing the square type form that we can work out for there. 2 marks for this part of the question. Let's go ahead and we'll do that at the moment. Right, there's a variety of different ways to do this. I'll show you the way that I like doing it. Okay, so what we're going to do is, anyway, we're going to put this here into this form. Okay, so what I usually do is I look to make sure that I can get the x squared term with a coefficient of 1, which we've got there already, so it's a more simple type of question to complete the square here. I'm then going to take a half of the value or the coefficient of x. So for here it's going to be the value of a, so the value of a is equal to a half of the minus 6, which is equal to minus 3. From there I'm going to substitute that into 2 places. I'm going to go for x squared. I'm going to put it in here first, and then what I'm going to do, I'm going to subtract that there in there as well. And what I've got is I've got the plus 13 that's sitting there. All I'll do is I'll square this out in the next line, so I'll just show a bit more working for this one. That'll be minus 9 plus 13, and from there what I've got is x minus 3 squared, and that's going to be plus 4. And that's already taken the trinomial into that form there. So that's that part completed. So that's part A. Right, let's move on to part B. So part B, sketch the graph of x squared minus 6x plus 13. So that's this here. Okay, and what I know is that putting it into that form helps me out, because I can just pick from there and take the turning point straight from there. So the turning point is going to be equal to, so remember when we look at it in this form, it's the opposite of that one. Okay, so it's going to be 3 and it's going to be 4. Okay, remember the part in the bracket shifts the graph from left to right, or left and right, whichever sign we've got in there. If it's a negative, it goes to the right. If it's a positive number, it will go to the left. Okay, so 3, 4, we just take that as our y coordinate for the turning point. From this also I can see that the graph is a minimum. Okay, so the graph's going to be that type of shape there, and that's because what we've got is we've got x squared is positive. Okay, so that's why I know that that's going to be a minimum, just if I squared that bracket out there. Okay, so let's find some other parts that we need for the graph. So for the graph, what I need is, I need to know where it cuts through the y-axis. So what I'll do is I'll just put a drawing in here, so where it cuts through the y-axis. I need to know if it cuts through the x-axis. Okay, so there's my x-axis there, there's my y-axis, and there's 0. So to find where it cuts through the y-axis, I'm going to let x equal to 0. Okay, so for the y-intercept, let x equal 0. And what I'll do is I'll just substitute it into this equation up at the top. So y, when x is equal to 0, is equal to 0 squared minus 6 times 0, and that's going to be plus 13. So from there I can see that this is just going to be equal to 13. Okay, so my y-intercept is going to be 0, 13. Okay, so I've got 2 coordinates already. I've got a turning point of 3, 4, and I've also got coordinates of 0, 13, where it's going to cut through the y-intercept. Now usually what we would do is we would try and find out what the x-intercept is, okay? But I know that the graph's a minimum, so it's going to be that shape. It's actually turning at 3 along and 4 up, so it's actually turning at 3, 4. I'm not going to have any x-intercepts at all, so I'm just going to draw it from there. And I know that I've got a point up here somewhere that will be 0, 13. Where it cuts through the y-axis. So drawing that graph would be drawn from here, just come through that point, turn down here, and back up from there. Okay, and that would be my graph drawn from there. Right, so what I could say is that if I did try to work out the x-intercepts, if I just tried to go ahead and do that, what I could say is for the x-intercepts, or what you could call them, they would be the roots. We'll let y equal 0. So 0 equals x squared minus 6x plus 13, and if I went to try and factorise that, I would struggle to do that, because if I look at b squared minus 4ac and I try to work that through, what I would get is I would get minus 6 squared minus 4 times a, which would be 1, and c, which would be 13, giving me, let's see what we got, we've got 36 there, minus 52, so that would give me an answer there of minus 16. And what I can see is that since b squared minus 4ac is less than 0, no real roots exist. Okay, I didn't have to do that, but I'm just trying to show you that that's maybe a process that you might follow through. You'll find the y-intercept, try and find the x-intercepts, but that tells you that it's certainly not going to touch there at all. Right, let's look for the next part of the question. So we're going to state the range of values for y. So part 2. So the range of values would be any value from there upwards for in the y direction. So y must just be greater than or equal to 4. Just straightforward like that. That's all we've got for that question there. For part C, we have to write down the maximum value of this here, okay? So what I can say is that for the maximum value of 1 all over x squared minus 6x plus 13, and I hope you've realised that that there is what we've been working on all the time here. So I know that the maximum value of this fraction occurs when the bit at the bottom of the fraction, the denominator, is a minimum. So when x squared minus 6x plus 13 is a minimum. Okay, so quite simply all I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the minimum value of x squared minus 6x plus 13, which is going to be 4. Okay, so that's the lowest point that it gets to. So what I can say is, therefore, the maximum is going to be equal to 1 all over 4. And that's the final answer for that question there. Okay, let's see the marking for this one. Right, so I'm going to go for the 2 marks that we're going to get for completing the square. I'll go for 1 mark for getting this part here, 1 mark for getting the 4. For next one, I'll go for 1 mark for getting the turning point. I'll get the next mark for the y-intercept. I'll take 1 mark also for the correct drawing and correctly annotated, so I'd like to see the points in there. They must be annotated, and the correct shape obviously for the graph there as well. So that would be the 3rd mark, and the 4th mark for part B will go for y is greater than or equal to 4. Final mark for part C, just a 1 mark, so it would really be just this part here that we'd be looking for. So this question here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 marks in total out of 7.